Good afternoon. Yesterday, Brian began a series of videos that he calls Brief Thoughts. I encourage you to look on his Facebook page because what he had to say yesterday was very good and appropriate, and I'm sure the ones that come will be equally so. And in regard to that, it has been suggested to me that that's just the sort of thing that we need at this particular time, and that I, as well as others, should consider doing something similar. If you've ever sat in a class that I've taught, I'm sure you know that the word brief is not part of my vocabulary. However, I agree that it is a good idea, and it can have great results. So I will attempt, although not daily, to offer some thoughts now and then that I hope will be encouraging as well as brief. I'm going to call them Ron's Ramblings because that just seems fitting. And I'd like to talk about Caleb today. 45 years before the events that we talked about a few days ago that ended in the Israelites going into Canaan, Caleb was sent into Canaan as a spy. Since that time, Joshua has led the Israelites into the Promised Land and taken control of most of it. They had their problems, and as a result, they were not able to completely rid the land of the Canaanites. But they had taken most of it, and just shy of 6 years after the taking of Jericho, it's time to divide the land among the 12 tribes. The latter part of the book of Joshua describes that. It takes place at Shiloh, and it's easy for me to conjure up in my mind, I guess, two old stalwart friends, Joshua and Caleb. Joshua, who would be pushing the 100-year mark about this time, and Caleb, we know for a certainty, was 85. And it's not hard to imagine that Caleb would come up to his old friend and ask if he remembered the promise that Moses had made to Caleb after they came back from spying out the land of Canaan. The promise was that he could have his pick of the land as a part of his inheritance. And in spite of his age, Joshua did remember that promise, and he asked him, "What part do you want?" Well, it was Hebron. You may remember when the 12 spies came back from spying out the land of Canaan, that the report that they gave to the people at that time was that there were giants in the land. There were strong walled cities, and that they didn't feel like they could take it. Well, those strong walled cities and the place where the giants were located was Hebron, the land that Caleb selected to be his. He believed, Caleb, that with God's help he could drive them out of the land, and he did. You don't read a lot about Caleb, but he was throughout the period of time present in all of the circumstances that happened. He saw Moses when he came back from Egypt, came back to Egypt. He was there to witness the plagues that were pronounced by Moses on the land of Egypt in order to get Pharaoh to release his people and let them leave the land. He was there when Moses went up on the mountain, and I'm sure that Caleb felt the the ground trembling as God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. He was 40 years old when he was sent out as a spy. He was there during all those 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, and I suspect he was a primary figure throughout the taking of the land of Canaan. And after all of this, he chose to finish what he started by driving the giants out of their land and taking possession of it for his own. What do you suppose enabled Caleb to accomplish all that he accomplished? Well, I believe it was three things. Obviously, his courage, but also his confidence in God and his commitment to God. You see, God had everything Caleb had to offer. It is said of Caleb 6 different times in the Old Testament when his name is mentioned that he wholly followed the Lord. In the original Hebrew language, that phrase carries a lot stronger meaning. It means that he closed the gap. That's the literal meaning. Closed the gap. It refers to the fact that Caleb, being committed to keeping himself close to God, not letting any space come between them. Every inch, every ounce, every fiber of Caleb belonged to the Lord. Being one of the 12 spies, along with Joshua, he went against the majority. There's always going to be someone that says things can't be done. There will always be discouragement and doubt. But in spite of everything negative, Caleb claimed the promise. That's because he refused to quit and he never gave up. God has given us a promise, a home in heaven where we can live with him forever. I believe Caleb is already there. If we have the courage that Caleb had, if we have the confidence that he had, if we have the commitment that he had to God, then we too can receive that promise. Never give up. Always look toward the goal. I hope you have a good afternoon.